Are you into like biking and that?
Huh?
Are you into like biking?
Nah, rock and roll.
Oh, okay, rock and roll.
Yeah.
How is the rock and roll lifestyle? Tell me about it. I want you to teach me. How would you do? What's it like? What'd you do? Like, tell me the rock. How do you rock and roll?
Probably the same things you do. I just listen to different music.
Well, I mean, these guys are getting excited. Is that rock and roll style like that?
Not at all. No. I've been people here, they think they can shout. If they shout louder, it's more true. That's what it seems like here.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's true. Tell me how. What's associated with rock and roll? It's kind of like going to concerts, taking a bit of pills, ecstasy pill.
I don't do drugs.
No, not you. That's what's associated with. Just the music. You could say that the music itself is a kind of ecstasy.
I'm okay. I'm not. Nah, I'm okay. I just want to chat.
Yeah, it's cool. That's cool. What's your name again?
Simba.
Simba. Oh, that's interesting, man. So you were saying that you're an atheist.
Yeah.
So you don't believe in an entity that created the universe.
Why? Because they need to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, why is there a need to is a different question. Let me ask you a question. How did we get here?
Oh God, I've got 3 cameras on me.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
It's impossible for a person to know that.
Do you think so?
Unless they can go back in time, yeah.
Do you think it's impossible for us to know that?
I mean, unless you can come up with theories.
Okay.
And you can demonstrate them to be more likely than other theories.
Right. So yeah, okay. So that's exactly how I would agree with you on that. I would agree with that. Oh, that's a new one. What's this? It's like a rock and roll one. I like the chains and stuff, man. What's that? Is that a dragon?
Yeah.
I like it, man. Yeah, all right. So look, this is what I will say to you. I will say to you in a nutshell. Do you believe in causation?
Define the term.
A cause is something which brings rise to phenomena.
I'm not grasping what you're saying here.
So, the reason why things exist is because...
Oh, the watchmaker.
No, not even. I'm saying, let me put it in a different way. Something which is brought into existence has been brought into existence. Something which has a beginning has been brought into existence. Do you agree with that premise?
On a macroscopic scale.
Or on any level. For example, if I say the tree, right? The tree has a beginning.
Mechanics, you can have things that phase in and out of existence. You can see evidence of that, like quarks and things like that.
These guys are shut. Hey, calm down, guys. Calm down. Calm down, guys, please, yeah? These guys are a bit too loud, isn't it? It's like a rock and roll concert up in here, you know what I mean? What is this like? What kind of rock and roll thing you listen to?
Well, like bands or...
Yeah, what do you... I don't know about...
the normal stuff you probably heard, like ACDC and...
I don't know about this.
Yeah, music.
Oh, okay.
I listen to music.
Yeah? Alright, anyways. What I was going to say to you is this, yeah? Generally speaking, what I'm saying to you is, if you believe in causation, yeah? Do you believe, is this a principle you're willing to live your life by? So if something has happened, do you have reason to believe it's happened, or it's been given rise to because of something else which has given rise to it?
Live my life by that.
Do you accept the idea?
I mean, I accept if you buy a coffee from McDonald's, the beans would have had to come from that sort of thing.
Yeah, would you accept that as a premise you're willing to live your life by?
That sort of thing, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So what's the cause of the universe?
But that's a different matter. That's what I'm saying.
Why is that a different matter? Why?
Switch. Well, again, we can't test. I mean, we can come up with theories and we can demonstrate them to be more plausible. We can't say for certain this definitely happened then.
So if you believe in causation,
yeah.
I'm saying that. So, for example, something is in existence. Something has a beginning.
Yeah.
If something has a beginning, would you agree that that thing which has a beginning has a cause?
In the world that we live in, yeah.
Okay. So would you apply the same logic with the universe?
Not necessarily. I mean, again, there's a lot of research on this. I'm not qualified to talk about it. But there's all, do you know what? Like I say, do you know what quarks are? Like if you get down to bosons and things like that.
Okay, on a quantum level, yeah.
Yeah. there's evidence that this is how like quantum computers work too. You have
Okay.
particles
The reason why I'll be honest with you, right?
Yeah.
The reason why
You're
I
asking
believe.
if God made the universe. Is
Right.
that what you're saying?
No, I haven't mentioned any God yet. Yeah. I'm just saying. The reason why I don't believe that a quantum analysis, is relevant to us today, is because there's still a lot of work to be done in bridging the gap between the macro and the micro. And now, frankly, scientists and logicians and mathematicians and physicists and etc., they haven't been able to bridge those gaps. So for us to talk about like things on a micro level, on a quantum level, and then apply them on a macro scale, I don't think it's justifiable at this level. Especially when a lot of the stuff that's happening on a quantum level contradicts quite apparently what's happening on the macro level. And these are paradoxes of the quantum mechanical world. Yeah. So I'm saying that instead of going down that rabbit hole, which could lead us into all kinds of avenues, which frankly are unexplored avenues, and we wouldn't have answers to them at this point, by virtue
a lot
of
of the principles are demonstrated to be, likely to happen. Like, again, we've got, quantum computers? They've got a lot of research going into that.
I understand, but what I'm saying is quantum mechanics as a science, right, is not really established in the same way as the macro. Like when we talk about physics,
we've had more time for the macro.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Exactly. Thank you. Yeah. So for that reason, for us to delve into, like for example, quantum mechanic principles, extrapolate from them, for example, logical precepts, and then use those precepts to inform a logical discussion, I think that would be kind of futile in a sense, because frankly, we don't know the limits, all the limitations of those particular principles in that context. And there are problems even now in bridging the gap between the micro and the macro. So that's why I say that, for example, are you willing to say that the principles of formal logic, ones that we know of, that we require for deduction, for instance, that we're willing to put them aside? Because if that's
Yeah, okay.
I don't want to say that. I'm saying that we don't have enough to say that. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm saying that there is not enough to say that.
To not focus on that for now.
No, what I'm saying is this, right? If you look at the quantum world, you'll find that some of the principles that can be extrapolated from quantum mechanics run counter to principles on the macro world, which include those that can be found in formal logic. Yeah. So I'm saying that unless we're willing to say that all of those formal logical principles, we're willing to put them aside because of what we see in quantum mechanics, which we can't yet explain, then we should put the quantum mechanical discussion to the side. Because quantum mechanics is not established yet for us to know.
We can put it to the side. It doesn't necessarily mean it's
right or wrong. Yeah, accepted. Yeah.
Like a lot of things, if you go down to a small enough scale, don't make sense in large scale. It's just what happens when you scale things down that way.
Yeah, accepted. All right.
The same way a universe, some of the mechanics that happen in the universe don't make sense if you're in a room. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It depends on the scale.
So that's why I'm talking to you about principles which we can see on a macro level, which we can, using empiricism, using deduction, using formal logic, using inductive logic, using abductive logic, using deductive logic, we can come to an agreement on. So things like causation, contingency, because if they form the base of our discussion, then we can build upon the discussion. So if I say to you, do you believe in causation and contingency? Right? So the fact that, for example, in this universe, in the space, this domain, that things are dependent upon other things.
Yeah, for the purpose of discussion.
Right, perfect. So if you agree with contingency and you agree with causation, then I will just simply ask you the question: what caused the universe, and what is the universe dependent upon?
No one knows. No human knows right now.
Fine, but you accept that something caused the universe and that the universe is dependent upon something.
You said on Earth. Again, you don't know that for a fact.
So let me ask you a question. Did something cause the universe, and or is the universe dependent upon something?
We can't see that far into space to determine that. That's what I'm saying. There's a number of theories.
All right, so you see, this is where I think the paths start to kind of separate, because if we say that we agree...
You're saying that, your belief is God started the universe.
No, I'm not talking about my belief. No, it's irrelevant to this discussion.
Or
right?
some being created universe.
What I'm saying is, at this point in time in this discussion, all I'm saying is, if you accept contingency and causation, the two C's, contingency meaning like dependency, causation, which we define as something which brings rise to phenomena. My simple question is, if we apply this logic to the universe, I could ask the question, did the universe was the universe caused into existence, and or is the universe dependent upon something else? So if we say yes, it was caused into existence because we apply causation everywhere, and yes, it was a result or is dependent upon something. My question is, what is it dependent upon? Do you see where I'm going with this?
No, but that's my point. You're applying the logic that you see around you. It's the same thing that, I'm not saying you are, I'm just saying it's the same sort of thing you get like flat earthers and things. Do they go, I can see the earth is flat, so therefore it must be, they do that sort of thing. I'm not saying you are.
Yeah, I'm not doing
that. It's not, you can't, they're two different questions what you're asking. You're saying if you apply the logic that we see on Earth to billions of years ago in the universe, then that doesn't make sense. Like it's two different subjects.
Okay, I can see where you're coming from.
You could say if you simplify it.
Let me simplify it.
Yeah.
Is the universe dependent upon something?
Its creation or its existence?
Its existence.
You could say its existence is, yeah.
Okay, fine.
As it is now.
What is it dependent upon?
Like physical principles. Like, what do you mean? What's dependent?
If the universe is dependent upon something, is the thing that is dependent upon dependent or independent? Think carefully. You said we agreed that the universe is dependent upon something, yeah?
Not the cause of it. As it is
I didn't talk about causation.
Yeah.
Now I was talking about contingency. Is the universe dependent upon something? Then that thing that is dependent upon, is it dependent or independent?
Well, it's dependent on many things. Like
so you have the universe. This is the universe.
Yeah.
Universe, yeah? You said it's dependent upon, so you agreed, yeah? Okay, it must be dependent upon something. Now, the thing that is dependent upon, is it dependent itself or is it independent?
What are you saying? The universe is infinite as far as we know.
Oh, hold on. You've just said that the universe, you agreed that the universe is dependent upon something, yeah? So if the universe is dependent upon something else, that something else here, yeah? That something else, is it itself dependent or independent?
It depends how you see the universe.
No.
Are you seeing it as a closed system or?
Yeah, okay, the universe is a closed system, yeah? The universe is a closed system which, according to physics, is expanding, which means it has a beginning, you could say, yeah? Which is the classical model of science today. Anyways, the universe is here. It's dependent. So it depends on something else. That something else that it's dependent upon, is that something else dependent or independent?
Well, it's part of the universe. I mean, again, we don't know how the universe began, so it's part of the universe.
We're saying it's dependent upon something else, which means, by definition, it's actually not part of the universe.
You're throwing out all these fallacies. Like, it depends.
What's the fallacy about this?
Like, you're saying questions that don't necessarily make sense.
Why?
Because it depends how you see. There's a million and one different factors to consider of what you're saying.
Well, give me one of them.
Well, like, it depends if you see the universe is closed or open.
Well, I said, okay,
we
see that the universe is a closed system, all right?
We can only see so far, that's the thing.
We can observe that the universe is expanding through redshift and whatnot, yeah? We could say, for instance, the universe is expanding. The universe had a beginning, it's a closed system. This universe, which is a closed system, which is expanding or whatever, I've asked, is it dependent on something else or is it independent? If we say now here it's dependent upon something else, okay, this something else which is dependent, this something else which is the universe is contingent on, is dependent on, is it itself dependent or independent? There's something else which the universe is dependent upon. What is it?
I wouldn't say anything else would have caused the universe.
I'm not talking about causation.
Well, then the laws of the universe would, like, if you change any of the laws.
But
like
the laws are not necessarily a cause of sustenance or maintenance. Laws literally are organizational structures which cause certain things to happen in certain ways. Yeah. They're not something which power or cause energy. It's not, laws are not energy, right? They're not a power source in a sense. Think of this as a mobile phone, right? The mobile phone, I've got my phone here somewhere, right?
I can imagine one, yeah.
All right, mobile phone, which I need to get a new upgrade. Okay. This mobile phone, let's assume for the purpose of analogy, this mobile phone is the universe.
Okay.
If this mobile phone is the universe, this mobile phone has a battery, which nowadays, I don't know why, back in my day, we could take out the battery and stuff. But now they've trapped it in and made it impossible for us to take out the battery for some reason, right? Anyways, the mobile phone has a battery. So it requires an energy source in order to power it. Therefore,
universe has energy with it. What do you mean? The universe needs a battery, or it needs some way to power it?
If we consider the universe as the mobile phone, its dependence is on something else in order for its generation, in order for it to be sustained and maintained. Just like this mobile phone, yes, it's on 62% battery, yeah? But believe me, because in a few maybe hours, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, it might be on 20%. Then it will be on 10%. Then it will be on 0%. Then it will say 30 seconds switch off. Then I won't be able to turn it on unless I power it. My question is now, if we consider the universe in the same way, that it's dependent upon something else in order for its generation, then I'm saying that something else. Is that something else limited in its abilities? Is it dependent itself on something else, or is that something else independent?
There's no something else. There's nothing outside the universe that powers it. The universe is.
So you're making a claim now. There is no.
As far as we know,
there is
the
no.
universe is itself.
Oh, you see. So you're saying there is no something else. So now the mobile is powering itself, in your analogy, right? So the mobile, it stays at 100% without any charge on.
Yeah, but that's because the universe isn't powered by something. It's the energy in the universe is contained within itself. As far as we know.
But what I'm saying, if it's a closed system, and it's been put.
You can't say whether or not it's closed though. We don't know that for sure. We can only see so far.
Well, the laws of physics apply only to the universe as we know it.
Yeah.
What is a closed system? A closed system is where certain things apply only within that particular system, right? So the laws of physics that we can observe, we can say they apply only to the universe. Now, going back to contingency, I want to.
You're going to bring up the second law of thermodynamics at some point, because it feels
we could bring the second law of thermodynamics as a supplementary argument.
The closed system you're talking about, but you can't talk about the universe having power or having energy without talking about the creation of that energy or how that may have happened.
Thank you very much.
But my point is,
that's good. Now you're talking. Go on.
But that's my point. The point is, we don't know for sure what caused the universe.
You seem like you've studied this in uni or something, man.
No, not in uni. That's what it's an interest of mine. That's what
okay,
I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm not qualified to
That's
talk
good.
about
That's
it.
all right.
I
It's
might
good.
get some things wrong.
All right, no problem.
But if you're talking about the causation of the universe,
I'm not talking about causation. I'm talking about contingency now. We're focusing on because there's a difference between causation and contingency. Do you notice that? Because a causation is something which brings a cause is something which brings rise to phenomena. Contingency is dependence. So they are different. That's why I started off by talking about causation and contingency. Because if you have a problem with causation, then let's focus on contingency.
okay.
So here, I'm just talking about the generation, the main.
How the universe powers itself, so to speak. Or
Yeah, why not? How does it remain in existence? Is it dependent upon itself for its own existence? Is it sovereign? Is it eternally besought of all? Is the universe eternally besought of all, or is it itself dependent upon something else? You good, yeah? You right, yeah? I like this. I might.
Again, it may well have had a beginning, so to speak, if you want to call it that. If it has, then
But here I'm not talking about time or beginning or causation. I'm just talking about contingency. Go back to our phone.
But you're asking how the universe powers itself,
Yeah.
so to speak. It powers it's eternal as far as we know. So the energy
Really?
is within
How do we know that? What's the evidence for
That's
that?
what I'm saying. As far as we know, though.
No, but there's no evidence to suggest. In fact, the scientific evidence runs counter to your claim. The second law of thermodynamics, the fact that the universe is actually expanding, both of those things run counter to the fact that the universe is eternal.
No, in the sense that you can keep going in one direction. And I mean, again.
But that's not eternality. That's not the definition of eternality. Is it eternal in terms of time? But even if it is eternal in terms of time, it doesn't stop it from being contingent. So you can have an eternal universe in terms of time, but still be contingent on something else. Think about
really
it.
Not understanding your point.
No. Look, because eternality, as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
is a term which is a reference to time, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's always existed. Something's always existed. Which, if you want to accept that, that's fine. If you want to accept that the universe always existed and there was no singularity and there's no beginning of the universe, which you kind of alluded to that you might believe in anyways. But let's say, for example, you believe that there was no beginning, yeah? And that it always existed. That does not run counter to contingency. Because just because something has always existed, it doesn't mean it's always powered itself.
So you're asking about energy not being able to be destroyed, about any sort of change?
No, that's within the, like you said, the closed system of the universe. But then, like you also
That's
said,
how it powers itself.
but like you also said, then we have to ask ourselves, how did the energy get there in the first place and have those physical properties?
Yeah.
Well,
That's where we come into the things that you don't want to talk about. That's what you don't
I like it.
You don't want to talk about quantum mechanics or the
No.
The
The thing that we really don't want to talk about is the ultimate cause.
But that's where the energy would have come from if there is a cause.
Thank you.
But you don't want to talk about that.
No, the ultimate cause, we would say, is an entity which has the ability, the propensity, the creative capacity, and the will to put all of that into existence.
Not necessarily. What, you're saying it can't be explained with natural causes, or
What's a natural cause? How do you define
things that happen naturally?
or in the context of the closed system?
Yeah,
Naturalism is a worldview, like materialism is probably the same thing, which is only relevant within the closed system of the universe. We can't use that word outside of the closed system of the universe without speculating.
But what's to say the universe isn't within? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're implying that there's an entity separate from the universe.
Yes, let's talk Simba, yeah?
Yeah.
Let me tell you something, right? Seriously. I think the truth is this. Me and you both know.
We don't know anything.
No, hold on. If we don't know anything, we wouldn't be having a conversation, believe me.
We don't know for sure about the universe.
I think both me and you know that if we do use the principles which we live by, principles of causation and contingency, and logical deductionism, and rationalism, yeah, and inference to the best explanation, if we use those principles which we live by, I think me and you both know that the best possible conclusion to the reality of the universe is that it was caused into existence, or is contingent upon some entity which is independent. Because had that not been the case, there would be a chain of dependent things, which would be a infinite regressive chain backward. Therefore, I would say to you that entity which caused everything to exist, the universe to exist, is in fact an intelligent source, is in fact a creative source, a powerful source with a will. And we would call that in the vernacular,
I mean, you can't.
because of the laws of physics. Because if you think about the laws of physics, they're intricate. The fine-tuning of the universe, which is a different.
A rock isn't intelligent.
Pardon?
A rock isn't intelligent, you know.
I've said nothing about a rock.
No, but you're saying about an entity that would have, like, for the universe to come about. You're saying an intelligent entity would have had to create it, that designs it.
Well, I haven't said would have had to. What I've just said, my wording is different to your wording. I've said the inference to the best explanation is that we have an intelligent entity, a thing, that caused the universe, or that the universe is dependent, contingent on. That's for me, the inference to the best explanation. In the same way as I would infer things.
To imply intelligence, you have to imply that this thing can think, whatever it would.
Not necessarily. That's
it has some sort of conscience about it.
Will.
To make a decision, but
yeah.
You can't. I mean, I could just as easily say.
Do you see that that's a plausible option?
Prove it. That's what I would say to.
Well, I would say to you, what is proof? Because here, I think that's the atheistic recourse to say prove it. Proving, what we just said, what we agreed upon. If you agree upon contingency and causation as principles that we can live our lives by, and if we do a deduction based on those principles, then that would constitute as a deductive proof. But if you don't want to use those principles and do an inference to the best explanation, then you won't have a proof. So it depends on what you consider proof.
No, but that's my point. You have as much proof as I may do, right? In the sense that you can.
What's your proof? That God doesn't exist?
No, in the sense that you're saying an intelligent being you think may have created the universe.
No. I said that's the best explanation.
That you have?
No, it's the best explanation. If we apply, and this is why...
I could just as easily say...
This is a conditional. So I said if we apply principles, if we say that we use as a base principles of causation and contingency, in my opinion, the inference to the best explanation is that the universe was caused into existence and or that it is contingent upon something which itself is independent, eternally besought of all, sovereign or otherwise not in need of anything else, as well as having a will, intelligence and capacity, creative capacity to put other things into existence. That in the vernacular is referred to as God.
Why do you need intelligence to put something into existence?
Pardon?
Why do you need intelligence to have something be put into existence?
You see, the wording you're using is different to the wording I'm using. You're using word need, which is a word of necessity. I'm not using this word need. I'm saying that the inference to the best explanation, why do we see laws of physics? The laws of physics are an expression of, I would say, organization, thought, or intelligence, because they are sophisticated, complicated. I would also argue that they allow for a range of different phenomena to take place at the same time, without there being, in physics terms, an implosion of the known universe, or, for instance, things to contradict itself in the universe. For there to be a sustaining of the universe, and for there to be different complicated things that are working within the context of the universe and coexisting within that context. So I'll say that is another layer of argument, which is the fine-tuning argument, which I'm sure you're familiar with. You've referenced it, the watchmaker's argument, whatever, which would also enhance the argument. Because frankly here, then you have three different things. We can triangulate this. We can say here you have causation, you have contingency, and now you have fine-tuning. Now you're boxed into these three different things. Question is, how can we explain something which is most likely contingent on something else, most likely caused by something else, and most likely a result of intelligence, as it is the expression of intelligent processes? So I would say that would entail that there is a singular cause and or something which the universe is contingent on, which is also intelligent and allows the universe to be put into existence.
But the cause may, again, there's a million and one theories about how the universe may have come into existence.
Well, give me one of them which you find compelling.
Compelling, I mean, we can't know for sure yet. Again, we've only just started looking into this stuff for the past 100 years. But again, if you look, I can't remember exactly what it is.
Multiverse.
No, not multiverse.
Okay.
No, there's been research done in the past few years. Again, going into quantum scales, they can basically find evidence of quarks. Do you know what they are? Quarks.
Quarks.
Yeah. Q-U-A-R.
Yeah, I've heard of them. I'm not a specialist in quarks
No,
or quantum mechanics.
I'm not qualified to
Right. Neither am I, which is why I know my limits. I'll tell you straightforwardly that the quantum world for me is a confusion, right?
It is confusing.
And especially when we try and bridge the gap between quantum
We've only been
and macro.
Here a few 100,000 years as humans. You know, it's not something we can comprehend.
Exactly.
It's not
So
like,
I would say that because quantum mechanics is paradoxical with the macro world on many different levels, yeah? Using the rules of quantum mechanics to inform a logical discussion at this rate is unjustifiable.
But you're asking for a compelling argument. One argument I found fairly compelling. It's not a definite. It's only, again, it's early stages. You have quarks, and they've basically found evidence that these can phase in and out of existence, like entirely in and out of existence. Tiny microscopic particles. They've also found evidence that, if anything, the universe, even if you go into deep space, there are still particles. If you go into deep space, you know, even if you go outside the Earth or outside of the solar system, you know, there's still particles around. It's not complete vacuum, absolute emptiness.
Absolutely. That goes against the idea that something could come from nothing.
In these experiments that have been done over the past few years, they found evidence to suggest that the universe, if anything, favours having something there, so to speak, rather than nothing. The Big Bang may well be a separate event. It may well be continuing. You know, it depends.
I understand what you're saying.
That would start,
but there is no coherent. You've made no coherent case for another explanation that could be inferred to the best explanation.
I mean, your best case is saying I don't know for sure how it happened. It must have been something that
I haven't said that.
That's what you're saying. You're saying it must be something.
Well, I don't think I have said that. I've never said once I don't know for sure. I haven't said these words.
Well, it's clear you don't know for sure.
But that's something that you've said. I don't mind you saying that. But then that we go to knowledge. What is knowledge, right? How do we know something for sure in the vernacular, right?
You're giving me essays and you're throwing all of these terms at me. At the end of it, if you boil it down, you're basically saying, logically speaking, as far as we can see, and as far as we experience on Earth, we don't know for sure, so therefore something must have created it.
I haven't said that.
No, but that's what you're implying. With
No,
what
no,
you're
no, I
saying.
haven't, no, but that's what you've interpreted
Look
my
up
words
at the
as.
rain right now. A logical way of seeing it.
I've said it this way. I say
No,
the
but